This we did not expect, but it looks like, guys, it's actually happening. After stamping Joshua Zirkzee's move to Milan as a rumor in the last video, I'm gonna have to eat up my words. Looks like it's actually real. As Fabrizio Romano and Matteo Moretto report that Milan have already informed Bologna they will be triggering the 40 million release clause for Joshua Zirkzee. And that's not just it. Gianluca Di Marzio reports about Jeffrey Moncada's London Blitz, where he's gone into Premier League clubs, talked to Aston Villa for Matty Cash, gone to Chelsea for Armando Broja, and I'm back with another episode of Rumor or Real where we look at all these profiles today to see which one of these reports can be stamped a rumor and which one can be stamped as real. Now, here's a little rundown on the whole Zirkzee situation. The fact of the matter is, guys, Milan have been signing a bunch of strikers pretty much over the past 5 years that are short-term replacements. And the replacements that Milan was making that were long-term basis, they didn't really perform very well. Ibrahimovic was brought back for his experience, but he was an older player. Same thing with Olivier Giroud. The player that Milan did sign with an eye on the future was Divock Origi, and we kind of saw how that move went. Recently, it was Luka Jovic, but then again, it was a last-minute transfer. So the fact here is that for almost half a decade, this Milan team has been looking for a high-quality striker, a high-quality number 9 to lead this lineup that is young, scores goals, and is a player for the future. A lot of profiles have been linked with Milan: Benjamin Sesko, Jonathan David, Joshua Zirkzee. The search for these profiles, these high-profile tickets, was that it's always going to be a high-priced item. So for me, when reports were coming around about how Milan's trying to go after Zirkzee, my response to Milan spending 40 million on a player was this: really? And then recently reports started to come out that, you know what, this move might actually not happen, and here's why. Because the agent of Joshua is asking for too much of a commission that Milan doesn't want to pay, and the arrival of Vincent Kompany to Bayern Munich from Burnley, this means that Zirkzee would probably making a move back to Bayern Munich, because this coach, Vincent Kompany, is the coach that he played under at Anderlecht, where he got a bunch of appearances and really had his breakthrough years. So he's probably going to want to go back to a European giant like Bayern and once again play under a coach that he thrived with. So these agent commissions, Kompany to Bayern, this is the reason why Joshua Zirkzee won't be moving to Milan. And I felt like that was just a flat out rumor. I felt like this move was never really on the cards, and then suddenly, pretty much a day after the last Rumor Real episode was put out, Matteo Moretto comes out and says, you know what, Milan has already informed Bologna that they're going to be activating Joshua Zirkzee's release clause. And soon after that, Fabrizio Romano comes out and confirms, yes, AC Milan is going to activate the release clause, bringing him to the rossoneri. And here's how the whole situation started to make sense. I think the whole Kompany, Bayern, Zirkzee, Trident, I think that was just kind of cooked up. The fact that he'll make a move back from Bologna to Bayern for that reason. Because at this point in time, all media reports suggest that Bayern have no interest in bringing Zirkzee back. He does have interest from a bunch of Premier League clubs. Arsenal is one of the clubs that are interested in him, but reports suggest that Zirkzee wants to stay in Serie A. He doesn't want to make a move away from Italy, which leaves us with teams that are inside of the league. So when you look at the champions and Inter, you realize that they have their own financial situation happening right now. Oak Tree is taken over, pretty much what had happened when Elliott took over. There might be a little bit more confusion as to how they're going to be spending their money. And let's be real, Inter already has decent quality attackers up front. Then if you look at a club like Juventus, Vlahovic had one of his best seasons this time around. So that's another top club with a little bit of funds available that's not going to be making a move for that player. And then you look at a team like Napoli, a lot of people believe that Osimhen's going to be making a move away from the club. They could get 100 million maybe over for that player, but that particular move, that sale hasn't quite happened yet, and it doesn't look like there's much of a concrete report or story coming out as to where Osimhen's going to be going next, which means that if this player wants to stay in Italy, the Serie A clubs that do have the financial strength, the potential financial strength to be able to buy this player, they all have reasons not to purchase him. So Bayern not having any interest, him not wanting to move to the Premier League, and the Serie A clubs not having the affordability or other reasons to not purchase this player, leaves the path for Milan to go for Joshua completely clear. And that's what the report suggests. Milan have already informed that they're going to be activating his 40 million release clause. They apparently already have an agreement with the player as well on a €4.5 million salary that could go up to 5 million on a 5-year contract, which would be perfect for the rossoneri because they already have Rafael locked down till 2028. I believe Pulisic is also 2028, and Zirkzee would be 2029. Now, naturally, the transfer window in Serie A is not going to be opening up till July 1st. You're going to hear a lot of different reports coming up leading leading up till July 1st. And the window that Bologna have set to be able to activate that release clause is between July 1st and July 15th. But the one roadblock that still exists, that was reported by La Gazzetta dello Sport, that in the last video I called a rumor, it looks like his agent Kia Joorabchian is asking for what, 15 million euros in a commission. And mostly the reason why he's asking for that much money is it's like a signing bonus because the player's release clause is relatively low. I mean, for Milan, this is going to be, I think, the third most expensive transfer in club history, but you could expect that if he was available in an open market, maybe the bids would push this, well over 50 million euros. Now, it does look like Milan has a meeting scheduled with Zirkzee's agent, and if they can bring his commission to under 10 million, they might be able to get the deal across the line. And multiple reports have suggested that the fact that Zirkzee sees Ibrahimovic as his idol, as the player that he admired the most, and Ibrahimovic was the one who was involved in this deal, that connection was probably what convinced Zirkzee to actually want to make this move. And at this point in time, seeing the reports that we're reading, seeing the sources that these reports are coming out from, it has to be said that this, after being stamped a rumor in the last video, now has to be stamped 100% as a real possibility. Which brings us to the other department that Milan has to fill in. Outside of the strike department, Milan has to fill in that central defensive midfield department, and looks like the profile that Milan is actually seriously being linked with now is Youssouf Fofana. This is a profile in the last video I did stamp as unlikely. I think maybe I'm changing my mind a little bit on him now, and it mostly comes from what has come out of the mouth of Cesc Fabregas. Now, Fabregas is not a reporter, he doesn't have much of an insight into what's going on, but he did come out in an interview. He did say that this is a player that is built for the Premier League, he would suit in the league very well. But according to him, according to Cesc Fabregas, it sounds like he's going to be headed to AC Milan because the new coach of Milan and Paulo Fonseca is going to be bringing him from Ligue 1. Now, as mentioned in the past, after the departure of Franck Kessie, Milan has truly failed to fill in that central defensive midfield role, especially with the departure of Sandro Tonali, who had a little bit more of a defensive profile. The signings that Milan made last summer transfer window were purely creative attacking players. And seeing the things that I was talking about with the potential move of Zirkzee to Milan, it would open up possibilities to score goals for Thierry Reinders and for Ruben Loftus-Cheek. But the key element in that is Milan has to have defensive balance. That defensive balance could potentially be brought on by Fofana. He's a true box-to-box midfielder, has a solid defensive profile, is a highly rated player. He has 1 year left on his contract with Monaco. It looks like he's already informed the club that he's going to be making a move. If they don't make a move for him, he's going to be leaving for free next season. So you'd expect that a player who has an evaluation somewhere around that 30 million mark, Monaco would potentially want to make a deal happen somewhere around the 20, maybe 25 million mark. And since Milan's management has publicly come out in the past and said that the role that they want to fill in is the striker, the central defensive midfielder, and a center back, it makes me believe that if they have accounted for Zirkzee's release clause of 40 million, that means they still have money left for the central defensive midfield and a center back role. And let's be real, in this present day transfer window environment, 20 million is a pretty normal amount to spend on a player. That tells me that Fofana would be within the budget that Milan has probably set out. So on this report, I'm going to actually switch the stamp from unlikely to possible. I think Fofana can actually join Milan, and Fabregas coming out in public and saying it just only makes me believe more that this is a real possibility. Which brings us to another report. Last time around, there was a report linking Theo Hernandez to Bayern Munich. Now we have to address this again. A report linking Theo Hernandez to either Real Madrid or to Manchester City. Theo with Milan has a contract till about 2026. So really, at the end of the day, Milan can feel pretty calm about it. This is not his final contract year. He has 2 years left on his contract, so Milan could extract a decent amount of money for this player. At the end of the day, none of us want him gone. We see him as a true leader of this Milan team, but Milan have reportedly been trying to negotiate a new deal with Theo. They haven't been able to come up with an agreement on his salary, but because of the fact that he has a contract to 2026, there's more than enough time for Milan to be able to negotiate a new deal for the player. But this graphic kind of freaked me out because that player in the middle right there, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, his worth is about 40 million now. That 40 million, or maybe even 20, 30 million, Milan failed on extracting for this particular player, sending him to an arch rival in Inter. And you look at more profiles like Franck Kessie making a free move to Barcelona, Donnarumma making a free move to PSG. I think at the end of the day, Milan doesn't want to keep leaving this potential revenue on the table. My hope is that Theo Hernandez signs an extension with Milan, I see him as the one leader of this Milan team. But at the end of the day, if he wants to, for whatever reason, this is just a hypothetical, if he wants to leave Milan, the rossoneri better cash out on this player. His worth at this point in time is probably close to 70 to 80 million. In my opinion, these reports right now, I believe they're just rumors. I don't think anything concrete is happening, but that doesn't mean that I don't think something concrete could happen. And another profile that Milan is being linked with is Aston Villa's Polish right back in Matty. Now, reports have come out, according to Gianluca Di Marzio, that Jeffrey Moncada is in London. He's already met with Aston Villa for cash. The one thing that these links with Thiago Santos in the past and Matty Cash are showing us is that Milan's management, the coaching department potentially, do not have as much faith in Davide Calabria. His performances over the last couple seasons have been, seriously under the microscope. For me, for 2 seasons straight, I've talked about how I believe that Milan should be looking for a higher quality right back. Looks like the profile that Milan has narrowed down to is players like Thiago Santos and now the profile of Cash. The thing that I like about this player is that he's 26 years old. He's played in a high octave, high tempo league like the Premier League. If you look at his time at Nottingham Forest, he was one of the year's named player of the season. If you look at his time at Aston Villa, at one point in time, he was named the player of the season. So as a right back to be the player of the season for 2 different teams in the Premier League, it tells you that the player has some decent quality. I mean, last season he did make 46 appearances, scored 5 goals, assisted a few times. But the part about this player that confuses me a little bit is that his transfer market value at least is around 28 million. He also has a contract till 2027. And that sort of moves away from the kind of profiles Milan usually chases. Milan chases players that are potentially in their final year of the contracts, in which case it becomes easier to have a negotiating position where you can get a potential bargain for the player. But with Cash, that won't quite be the case with the contract till 2027. And this is an Aston Villa side that is not going to be playing in the Champions League next season. So even for the player, there might be an incentive to move to a bigger club like Milan, but you're still in a team that is playing well, coached really well by Unai Emery, and is playing in the Champions League next season. To me, at this point in time, this particular report, I believe the report is absolutely real, but the possibility of this player coming to Milan, I think right now I'm going to stamp this as unlikely. And that's purely because of his market value, the fact that his club is playing in the Champions League, and he has 3 years left on his contracts. And this blitz in London by Jeffrey Moncada also included a meeting with Chelsea for Armando Broja. Now, this is a profile that Milan has chased in the past. For whatever reason in the past, Chelsea was not open to doing a deal for this player, but now it looks like this is one of the reasons why Jeffrey Moncada went to London, because there are a lot of players that are under FFP restrictions, and they might be forced to make a sale before the month of June ends. And everybody knows the madness that has happened with Chelsea over the past couple of years and how Milan has benefited from that. They're now once again trying to look at the profile of Armando Broja, a striker who is apparently not an alternative to Joshua Zirkzee. He's actually a backup player for Zirkzee. Milan would be considering signing Zirkzee and Broja, not Zirkzee or Broja. And seeing the fact that this guy's had limited playtime with Chelsea, his value probably somewhere on that 20 million mark, Milan could even get a deal considering the fact that Chelsea has these financial fair play issues happening. I'm going to stamp this report of Armando Broja moving to Milan as possible. I think it can actually happen. Well, there you have it, Milanisti. Those are the profiles we wanted to look at today. Looks like the transfer market for Milan is truly livening up once again, just like it did last summer. But at this point in time, looks like they're doing everything they can to get that credit back in the bank, listening to those Curva Sud banners, listening to the fan base, and trying to bring those fans with some important signings back on their side. You guys let me know in the comment section which of these profiles you think is actually going to be happening. And as always, Forza Milan, grazie mille, ciao tutti.